Well, welcome to the Ask Dr. Wilson show, and I am here with the executive director of Stand for Health Freedom, and also my wife here, Leah Wilson. And we're going to be talking about today masks, a hot topic, masks.
I haven't seen any lately.
Well, guess what? I've got a new business, and it's the creation of masks. You can get it on the ground level. What do you think? You in?
Let's see if we can make it take off, right?
All right, masks. A lot of people are wearing them. We're going to talk about the need or not the need to wear masks. And we're going to be talking about the topic of asymptomatic carriers, which is a very hot topic right now. Are you posing a risk to your neighbor by not wearing a mask? And then 3, we're going to talk about how to build a strong immune system and a healthy body. And I just want to kick this off by asking you a couple of questions here. But a lot of people don't know you or have not heard about Stand for Health Freedom. And so what is Stand for Health Freedom? What is your organization?
Yes, we are an organization that educates the population, the public, on issues regarding medical mandates. So what does that even mean to have a medical mandate? It's when the government is telling us that there's one way to take care of a health situation and they know the right way. And these mandates, what they do is they carry this notion of making adults into infants where we don't have the moral or intellectual capacity to be responsible and to pursue health, because we know that health is a personal right and a personal responsibility, and that it's not the government's job or the CDC's job or anyone else's job to dictate how I care for my body or how I care for my children.
That's so important right now, considering all things that are happening right now with COVID.
Right, because a lot of recommendations and even mandates are coming down the pipeline from, they start at the CDC level and they trickle down to perhaps the governor with the president's voice behind it, and then into your local arenas, into your cities, into your counties, municipalities, school districts. And so as that stuff trickles down, starts as recommendations, turns into mandates, it's changing how we live and how we interact with each other. But are we asking questions or just simply complying? Are we still taking responsibility for our personal health? Are we engaging in the conversation and creating a dialogue around these issues, or are we just nodding and complying with whatever we are told to do?
Well, it seems like there's a lot of nodding and complying, and then if you don't comply, you're deemed as someone who doesn't care for others.
There's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of shame in digging in and even just looking at what's best for my body and what's best for my children. And one of the big goals of Stand for Health Freedom is we want people to know that there is not shame in pursuing health, because you're being told there's only one way to pursue health, but that's not true. There are dissenting opinions. And the other thing is, we will never have a healthy population if we don't have healthy individuals. You can't build a strong society based on people who are sick and just complying with pharmaceutical recommendations. So there's no shame around it, but it's not a popular thing to do right now.
So let's talk about this idea of an asymptomatic carrier. And so what is an asymptomatic carrier? What does that term mean, and why should we care about that term?
So it's what's driving everything we're doing right now in terms of distancing from each other, wearing masks, upending our educational institutions, which is right now in progress. There's still time to understand it and to ask questions, but we're seeing the recommendations come down. So it means I don't have a cough, I don't have a runny nose, I don't have any upper respiratory issues or a fever, but yet you think I could still be a threat to you if I am with COVID-19, even though I'm not infected. If I were infected and it's replicating, I would have symptoms, right? So even though COVID-19 could be present in my body, I don't know it because there are no symptoms.
Well, it's amazing that that still exists, just given the fact that even the World Health Organization just came out and said, and I'll quote it directly, asymptomatic spread of coronavirus is very rare. That was from the World Health Organization, which, everything that they say is not set in stone. It's not scripture, but the World Health Organization said it's very rare. It doesn't spread on surfaces, and yet here we are for the past 3 months. We've been told that if you don't comply and wear a mask, that you're part of the problem and that you're not necessarily caring for the people who are at risk. And yet the science is not so settled. There's another study that you were just talking to me about, this study of 455. Tell me about that.
Yes, there was a 22-year-old female in Oregon, the state of Oregon, that had a congenital heart disorder. So she went into the hospital because she gets these flare-ups and she was having the issues with her heart, the symptoms that are correlated with her heart issue. So she's being cared for in the hospital. 3 days later, she started to improve, and they started doing some blood workup and found that she was with COVID-19. So people would say, okay, she had the infection, that she was infected. However, she had never had a fever. She had never had upper respiratory issues. So she has COVID-19 positive, but never any symptoms. And it was a perfect opportunity, especially in Oregon, where there's no test given to anyone without symptoms. So you have to have symptoms to get a test in Oregon. So then they have this woman in a hospital with the positive test without symptoms. So it was ripe for a great study. Let's see what happens with someone who's asymptomatic. So they did this study. They traced 455 contacts that she had been in close proximity with over the last 5 days before the positive test. And guess what they found?
I already know.
Zero. And these were people, family members, elderly, immunocompromised individuals that she had been in intimate contact with, like close proximity, extended periods of time, her healthcare workers that were caring for her. And out of 455 people, there were 0 that she had passed on COVID to. And so you're asking, if she didn't infect anyone else, is there spread from asymptomatic carriers?
So the idea of these selfish, asymptomatic carriers who are not staying home and staying safe, that are spreading this like wildfire, the narrative that we've been told, if you watch the mainstream media, I guess the science isn't so settled after all when it comes to that. And when it comes to masks, when it comes to the wearing of them, we're told about droplets, and we're told about the fact that the droplets and then get in the air, they become airborne, and then that is what actually infects other people. Let's talk about that. So our masks, are they, even the holes in the masks, small enough to protect against the spread of COVID-19?
There's a lot of questions on whether a mask is able to not only filter out viruses coming in, but if it's able to protect others against anything coming out. So as we're breathing, whatever we're breathing, the rich microbial world all around us, does the mask filter that in or out? It could be due to pore fit. It could be because the virus is the size of a nanometer and the pores are the size of a millimeter. It could be due to taking it on and off, to reusing the same mask.
Or putting it in your purse.
How many people are buying like designer masks? Are they wearing those once and throwing them away? Because the moisture, the reuse, the constant re-exposure for yourself isn't a great idea.
Well, you and I were at the mall here this past weekend. Okay, and so let's be real here. We're married, right? We're at the mall, and we tried to get into one. We're building a house, right? And so we tried to go in that one place, and we have our 2 kids with us, our 2 boys, 3 and 8 years old. And here I am. I'm holding the 3-year-old, and the 8-year-old's there. We start to go in, and what do? They stopped us and said everyone needs to wear a mask to get in there. And another time when, I'm speaking here in a week and a half, so I was at Nordstrom and I wanted to try on a shirt, and I go back there and I get stopped before going back there. He said, you have to wear a mask in order to try on this shirt. I felt so bad for that guy who stopped me because I just challenged it. I mean, am I?
It's not his fault, right?
Right. And I felt, but I wanted him to think, it's like, I know this isn't your policy and I know you're just here, but come on. The masks.
It's an invitation to think. It's not that you're holding him responsible. It's just, hey, let's think about this.
Well, the masks, so 0.03 microns is masks block that. 0.03. COVID measures 0.0125 microns. So just
fraction.
Just think
fraction
about that. I mean, it's like putting up a chain link fence to protect your house against mosquitoes.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's something we can all understand. Is this reasonable? And it's like, well, why not just do it? Why not just do it and take one for the team? Is there a reason to not do it?
Well, think about, okay, so that's a question that I was open really to ask you on that, because I have an idea of why we don't just comply and we don't just go down that rabbit trail, because one of the reasons why I think that this is a slippery slope is complying with things that don't make sense for the idea of the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. There's nothing about this that makes sense. And yet we do this and then we shame others who don't. And we see those who sell this idea and sell the fear are the same ones who are selling the solution. And so let me ask you about that. What do you think on the other side of this is the slippery slope and the reason why you and I don't wear masks?
Right. And I said take one for the team. And yes, that's exactly the concept of the greater good, that we should give up some of what we have or some of what, and have sounds so materialistic and selfish. However, it's not selfish to want to protect our rights in order to make sound decisions, to make responsible decisions, thinking decisions, so that our children can do the same. And so that we have an environment and a society that breeds responsible decision making, innovation, health, all those things. Whereas if we stop thinking and we just succumb to whatever has a financial benefit, we're in a really bad place. Where could that lead us if everything that we are told, everything that we're mandated to do, if they tell us to jump 3 feet in the air 5 times before you exit the threshold of your house every day, are we going to do it without asking questions? And so it's like, how controlled can we be without a dialogue and without sound decision making, without transparency in why this is actually a good idea?
And we're brinking on the edge of not being a free society. You and I talked about this not being free anymore when all of a sudden your rights slowly get removed, because they don't get all removed all at once. It's slowly that your rights get removed, and then your privileges also get removed, i.e. flying without having the most recent up-to-date shots against COVID, even though this has been fast-tracked and it's going to be implemented. And then we just saw with Colorado worked to pass SB 163, effectively eliminating exemptions for vaccines. And we know that those who are selling the panic are the ones selling the cure. We understand this. And right in on the backs of this whole pandemic and all the chaos is now they slide it in, removing religious exemptions, and they did it on a Sunday. So talk to me about, has that happened? I mean, that rarely do you hear it happening on a Sunday.
To our knowledge, there's never been a legislative committee hearing on a Sunday in Colorado. And a couple days before, they decide they're going to bring this bill up on a Sunday morning in the midst of all of the civil unrest, in the midst of lockdown type status. And they're saying, we're going to affect religious freedom. It did not remove religious exemptions, but it made it harder to get religious exemptions, and it tracks everyone who takes an exemption. If you opt out of, let's say, Hep B day 1 of life, if that's required for the Colorado school system, then you would have to enter in to a system that tracks all of your personal information because you opted out of a single vaccination that's not even transmissible in a school environment. So there are a lot of vaccines such as HPV, Hep B, tetanus that you don't give to your classmates, but yet you're required to get them. And if you don't get them, what this bill would do is it would make you validate your religious exemption to a health authority that sells pharmaceutical drugs and then track you in a system which takes away your privacy. And what does that open the floodgates for? That bureaucrats get to make our health decisions and add this risky COVID-19 vaccine to the school schedule without any public dialogue.
And now it's primed that healthcare workers are going to be the first ones, and then school kids, so children, and then school teachers, and then other and private institutions when it comes to education and when it comes to higher education. This is just a slippery slope where it's, okay, you want to be a teacher? You can't be a teacher without having this. You want to fly? Well, going across international waters, you certainly need to have it. And then going across state lines, you're going to need to have it. So you can see where this could go very easily. It's not like all at once, boom, the entire population has to have it. It's slowly picking off those who are maybe education teachers and healthcare workers. I mean, they do this strategically as if there's a plan.
Right. And the rights are always traded for safety. people comply because it's for your safety, it's for your kid's safety, it's for your neighbor's safety. They're trading these rights slowly, just complying. And then the question becomes, where does that end? And even though people understand, well, they can't make me do anything. Can you honestly picture in the US that they're going to make you inject your child or make you enter into a tracking system? Well, that's debatable, but the question is, they can make your life really inconvenient. You will basically have to exit society. And is that a feasible option? To no longer travel, to not hold a driver's license, to lose your job, have to change how you make a living and feed your children, to change how you educate your children and who in the household needs to homeschool. And even the thought of, in Colorado, is tracking the homeschooled children too. So they can make your life extremely inconvenient, and it raises red flags every time you opt out of a societal institution when there's such aggressive mandates in the pipeline.
And yet these are our elected officials. So how is Stand for Health Freedom taking a stand? Because this isn't all doom and gloom and bleak. And this isn't, so we have this, I believe we have this, sometimes this ideology where it's, hey, the world is going to end. It's kind of, it's the darkness is coming. It's prophesied. The darkness is going to get darker, the light gets lighter, and we understand that. And so it's kind of just take a back seat to the thing that's happening right now. And yet really should that be our position? And then what is Stand for Health Freedom doing to try to stand in the gap?
I think it's more obvious now than ever that we can't just stand by with systemic injustice. We're watching an uprising for hurting people right now that are responding to systemic injustice. And when we just allow that to happen, when we say, well, we're going to sacrifice some for the benefit of others because these interventions, pharmaceutical interventions, have risks up to death. And so when we say we're going to sacrifice some for others, that's not something we can stand for. And a lot of people just don't even realize that, there are other options. They can choose those other options, and that it's not selfish to do so. So breaking through those notions a lot of times only happens through education and quality education, and something easy for people to understand. So that's what Stand for Health Freedom sets out to do, is make it easy for people to be aware of issues that are in the pipeline that might affect them within their individual state or within our nation, and then do something about it. Take a stand. Let your elected official know instantaneously, right there with the click of a button, that you oppose this or you support it. Because like you said, it's not all doom and gloom. This movement of people who are saying health is a personal responsibility and a personal right is growing rapidly every single day. And that's why we're seeing the pressure get stronger, because more and more people are saying, hey, I want to choose how I care for my health. I don't want to be on more drugs. I don't want to be more dependent upon a pharmaceutical intervention. And so the movement is growing, and more people are saying, no, we're not going to tolerate this, that we want to let other people know there are options.
And so what happens is when a bill comes in through let me talk this out with you, and you interrupt me and tell me if this is not how it happens. So what I've seen is on the mailing list, and then you see a bill that comes through, and then Stand for Health Freedom really mails out the list. It affects those people in that individual area, and then they say you can take a stand now and contact your representative, and then just a click of a button, then it pre-populates who all my representatives are. And it's a customized message if I want to make it that customized message to just send it out, or I can customize it myself to tell that representative how I feel about it, which is really what we really want in this, is to make it just more of a personal thing. And then so you click the send, and then what happens is we create a voting block really to stand for health freedom. And then we can hold our legislators accountable and say, listen, we've got X number of people who think like this. This isn't a fringe issue.
That's right.
It's not a fringe issue at all. This is an issue that we deeply care about, because we see the slippery slope of what it means to have any pharmaceutical products that's mandated for us.
And that's exactly the point, is there are warriors on the ground who follow these issues very closely and who stand up. However, when we stand together and show them that we are not a super minority, and to show them that we do cast votes at election time, and we will cast votes for or against them based on maintaining our ability to care for ourselves. And this is a single vote issue for a lot of a single issue vote. Am I saying that right?
No, I don't think you are.
It's a single issue vote for a lot of people. they say, if you're going to support my freedom to care for my own body and care for my children, I'll vote for you. And if you're not, I won't vote for you. Because when we lose our health freedom, we lose all freedom. And so, yes, that's true that you receive alerts based on issues that we're covering in that area. If it's your area, then you will be connected. You'll be contacting your representatives directly, and personalizing it is always a good idea, but not everyone has the ability or desire or thoughts to do that, but they know that they care, and that matters.
That's great. So I think let's pause there, and we're going to come right back. And I want to talk about, as we come back, is your mask toxic? And we're going to talk through, are there other implications of your mask that could actually have harmful effects for you? So let's pause and take a little breather, and then we're going to come right back. Okay, this is the Ask Dr. Wilson show, and I am here being joined by the Executive Director of Stand for Health Freedom, and also my wife, Leah Wilson, and we're talking about asymptomatic carriers. We just went through how the World Health Organization said asymptomatic carriers pose very little risk to the rest of the population. It doesn't really spread on surfaces very easily, and we're talking about masks. And when we talk about masks, I've got a couple of questions for you, and I want to dialogue about this. When it comes to masks, we talked about how the holes in the masks and the fitting of masks make it very unlikely for that person to prevent the spread of COVID and also protect themselves. But are there other implications when it comes to masks that we should really be aware of when it comes to the idea of masks making you healthy? One is your mask making you toxic? So talk to me about materials of, certain materials that could be used there that could cause us to be toxic when it comes to masks.
Right, and it's important to think through any health decision. So if I'm doing something for my health, then I think through it, I look at the facts of both sides, and then I make a decision for myself. So this isn't about whether masks are right or wrong. It's about retaining the decision to wear a mask or not, and not being put out for it or shamed for it or ostracized if you do or don't wear a mask. And so, are there toxic properties to masks? What are the materials? I mean, I would venture to say even more than dozens now of types of masks that people are wearing.
Well, think about if it's cotton. So according to the Extension Toxicology Network, this is a direct quote, chemicals can be absorbed through the skin and into the bloodstream, causing toxic effects. We know that cotton is a sprayed material, and we know that glyphosate is harmful to human health and most likely a probable carcinogen, meaning probably carcinogenic. And so if we're wearing a mask, it's being sprayed with harmful, and now we're also breathing in those chemicals on a day in and day out basis when it comes to wearing of the mask. It's not only touching your skin because it gets into your bloodstream, but now you're breathing those things in. Show me the research or the animal studies, the human studies, the longitudinal studies that show wearing your mask over time does not make you sick. The burden of proof is on them. Show me how it doesn't make you sick. And I want to be clear on this, because this isn't shame of those who wear masks. And if you're wearing a mask, it's not like you're fearful. There's probably good reasons why you're doing it. And there's no shame behind it. You've got an older adult in your family, and you just want to show respect, and you still be able to go there and see that older adult or whatever that is, your decision for yourself or your family, that's perfectly fine. But let's also not shame those who aren't wearing the mask as if they're so selfish that they're not caring for anyone else except for themselves.
And I want to add, even with the older adult situation, that not all older adults are extremely vulnerable or feel vulnerable to this. Your biological age and your chronological age are very different, first of all. Second of all, not everyone has the same values. Your grandmother might not want to see you wearing a mask. She might want to fully connect with you. And so if you don't wear a mask traditionally, you're going to visit your elderly grandparent, then ask them if they prefer, or allow them to ask you if they prefer that you wear the mask. Don't assume that you're protecting them with a mask, because there's a lot of evidence that says that it's questionable whether it's protective, and there's a lot of evidence that says it could be a detriment. Like you're talking about the sprayed cotton or the dyed cotton. There's an old adage, something about the indigo dyer doesn't wear indigo. And just realizing that there's a cost to decisions that we make. And when you have something right next to your face, the endocrine disruption that can occur and the respiratory interference and the allergic reactions that can happen. And I don't know about you, but wearing a mask and limiting your airspace, it doesn't feel great. And they even have done studies way before COVID came out on the effects on surgeons wearing masks during surgery and how it does lower their internal oxygen saturation. And what do we know about oxygen? It's needed for healthy cells. Healthy cells need oxygen. Your immune system needs oxygen.
And then when you suppress that, there's all kinds of harmful effects. I'm already getting patients who are having upper respiratory problems that are unexplainable. Pneumonia-like symptoms, but it's not pneumonia. Chest palpitations in their chest that's not explainable from their heart. And these are people who, because of work, were forced to wear their mask. And yet they deeply don't want to. And that's something that's very interesting here that, again, will not be studied and cannot be studied, is going against your personal health philosophy and being mandated to do something that you know is going to be harmful to your own human body. How does that have an effect on your health? We know that placebos, even if, let's say, it's just all a placebo, that it's all in your head, we know that it has a profound effect.
Right.
Sugar pills sometimes outperform the medicine. And so if that person believes that to be harmful for themselves, well, what is that going to do long-term for their body? What kind of anxiety? What kind of depression? We know that anxiety and depression are skyrocketing now with shelter in place. We know that just by not being able to have human contact, that we hear psychologists and psychiatrists reporting all kinds of suicidal thoughts, suicidal behavior. We know that's on the rise right now, and we know that there is a detrimental outcome. In fact, 600 physicians signed this statement saying that the lockdown has had harmful and catastrophic effects on the human population. And so given the fact that even just these carcinogens, or let's just call them toxins, that are directly on your skin and you're breathing them in, we know that it has negative effects. You mentioned the endocrine system. Well, that's just hormonal dysfunction, behavioral problems, immune system problems, digestive system problems, reproduction issues, skin problems, cancer. The list goes on when it comes to the toxins that are being exposed to, not just through masks, but throughout the environment with spraying everything, disinfecting things. The EPA estimated that our indoor environment is 4 to 6 times more toxic than our outdoor environment.
Now what?
And now here we are, sheltering in place, spending more time inside than outside. Many people afraid to go outside. I have patients who haven't been outside since February.
And they're increasing their disinfecting process too. What are they using to disinfect, and what are they being exposed to over and over and over?
Aerosols and disinfectants and you name
Harsh
it.
chemicals.
And so let's take a step back here and say, okay, this is for public health. Yes, this whole thing is for public health. So the outcome should be a healthier society, yet we close down our gyms. We now being mandated to wear masks to go to certain places. We now know that we are being encouraged to spray and disinfect everything. And if you own a business and you don't do those things, again, you're just selfish and you're putting everyone at harm, and then you get the nasty emails.
Well, and that's what, talking about spraying and disinfecting everything, you're not even exaggerating. When we were at the mall, one of our little guys grew out of his shoes. Like his toes were literally coming out of his shoes almost, thinning out at the end. And so we're there trying on shoes, and I just made a joke to the woman. I said, well, good thing we're buying these ones now. You don't have to quarantine them. And she was like, oh, yeah, if you wouldn't have bought them, I just would have set them aside for 36 hours before anyone else could touch them again. And I was thinking, how do you do that? Like, did she follow me around in every shirt that I touched? You know, they're having huge sales because they need people to buy things. And how does that fall in line with, did she quarantine every shirt I touched after I left?
Yeah, how far does this go? How far does this go? It's like those, if you're trying to follow all the rules and do everything exactly right. I mean, when we went to, we're trying to support restaurants, we're trying to support local businesses. And so, we go to one of the restaurants and they ask us these questions about, these personal health questions about our exposure to COVID and symptomatic, which is fine. I understand that. But then they ask us to put it on a sheet of paper and sign and put on our personal contact information. I can see everyone's name on there. I can see all their phone numbers. I can see their signature. Hello. That's just a direct violation of your personal health information. And you think about just how many steps are we willing to take to not make common sense and take common sense measures when it comes to our health.
Right.
We've eliminated. What I'm nervous about, candidly, is how far are we willing to go completely against nature in order to protect the greater good or protect the whole.
Right.
We're going completely against what God's laws of health and healing in nature and natural laws that have existed for however long the human race has been around. And we're going so against that in the name of, let's call it public health or public safety, whatever that is. And we say it's all because of this deadly plague. Is this really a plague that's happening right now? That's a question we need to ask ourselves.
You have to ask yourself, A, is it a plague? Look at the data, look at the mortality rates, look at what's happening. And then B, when we're told next time this rolls around that we have to avoid this because it's too costly, pandemics are too costly, we need to ask, what was the money spent on and was it justified in spending it? With shutting down all businesses, non-essential businesses. There's a class of businesses, you're either deemed non-essential or essential, and then the government gets to tell you whether or not you get to keep earning your living for your family or not. And so it's, what are the costs? What are the true costs to a pandemic? And when we are told next time that a virus circulates or that the next flu strain comes around, that these things have to be done or that you must do A, B, and C because of the cost, we need to be aware of, was this a plague and what are the true costs of a pandemic?
Was it the pandemic or was it our reaction to it?
And was the reaction justified? And we should really understand those issues. We're not just, pets around here with behaviors that are said, sit, stay, speak. No, we're thinking, responsible, engaged humans. We live in a democratic republic where we are engaged with the lawmaking. We are engaged with what's best for our children and ourselves and the future generations. And that's why we care so much, is because we have to have these conversations in order to set up our future generations for what they deserve, because I firmly believe that our kids deserve better than this. That they don't deserve to be 6 feet away from their classmates and with their teachers wearing masks. And they certainly don't deserve us to stay on the track of 54% of them having at least one diagnosed chronic disease.
That's so good. So what are we going to do about it? With Stand for Health Freedom, with your organization, most people don't know that you're attorney by practice, attorney by trade, and you have this organization, you're the executive director of Stand for Health Freedom. How do we take a stand? How can this person listening right now say, okay, I agree, I disagree, maybe I want to take some pharmaceutical products. I don't want them to be mandated for me. I don't want anything that they put in the pipeline to be mandated for me.
Right.
So how can I then speak out and speak up and make a difference?
And our platform covers people who, vaccines is an easy illustration. People who do every vaccine, partially vaccinate, don't vaccinate at all, vaccinate with 1 or 2, some just opt out of HPV or flu. And we have people who take a stand on standforhealthfreedom.com from all of those diverse sets of beliefs. And so what you do is you text the word no mandates, all one word, to 313131. So you text in and you'll get a link to sign our latest petition or just to join, but you'll land on our website. If you press the link, then you'll be opted in to stay informed. And the whole goal is that we engage more and more people in these conversations so we can be aware of where we're headed and so that we can maintain our health freedom, the ability to take care of ourselves, take care of our children, to have a say in what goes into our body and what doesn't. And so once you get engaged and you understand these conversations, it's acting in accordance with your own understanding and your own deeply held beliefs. Because how many times have I gone into a store lately and I'm the only one without a mask, and then I see the 5 people around me take theirs off? Because they just want to know it's okay. They want to know it's okay to take care of themselves, that it's not selfish to make what they see as the best decisions. And If everyone sits down and just complies and we have zero leaders, zero people stepping out and doing what they see as best for not only myself but for those around me, then where will we end up? So it's engaging in these conversations, engaging more people, inviting them to the table to think about these things and come to an understanding for themselves through confusion. You know, you're confused? Great. That's how you come to an understanding.
Text no mandates to 313131.
That's right. And you'll get a link and you'll land on our site and you're invited to sign our petition to say that we don't want medical mandates, and or just to go to the join. There'll also be a button in the top right that says join, and you can just receive our monthly newsletters or alerts if there's something in your town.
Okay, this is the Ask Dr. Wilson show. I'm here with the executive director of Stand for Health Freedom, also attorney, and my wife, Leah Wilson, and we're talking about COVID-19. We're talking about asymptomatic carriers not actually posing a risk. We're also talking about masks and the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of masks. We went through the World Health Organization saying asymptomatic carriers are not a risk for the population. We talked about how COVID does not spread easily on surfaces, and yet here we are wearing the mask, disinfecting our world. We know there's going to be negative health outcomes. We talked through all the different ways there's going to be negative health outcomes. And now I want to talk to you and ask you a couple questions about the next virus, the next wave, whether it's this one or something else. And we just heard, you just told me Ebola out of Congo potentially. There's going to, there's Zika. When I went to the Olympics in Rio, Zika was the threat at that time. There's going to be another thing that comes out eventually.
There will be another infectious disease outbreak.
I would bet all the money I have in the bank on the fact there will be something else that happens in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
So what's going to be our response when that happens? As a healthy population, as maybe a population that learned from this first one, hopefully, what's our next response?
What's our next response? It's a big question. Well, I think the biggest question is, will the response be something that we have any say in? And if we just give up all of our rights right now to have a dialogue or to have a say in what response is had, then who knows what the next response will be. However, if we think about these questions critically and engage in these conversations and stand up for what we want to see with health as a personal responsibility, then hopefully people will learn that this is an immune system problem. And that we are all afraid because we feel vulnerable. I say we are all afraid. I'm saying collectively as a population right now, there's a big overarching sense of fear. Will my daughter that has asthma be able to be resilient to this virus? Will I that am overweight be resilient to this virus? There's these people are asking these questions, and then they hear what the solution is coming down from regulatory agencies and government officials, and they just comply because it's their best bet in their mind.
Fear has been shown to depress the immune system, whereas hope and confidence has been shown to have a positive effect on the immune system.
Well, that's the exact opposite tactic that our government, and I say tactic because you can read it. I'm not labeling or making assumptions. Literally, you see in the media and you see in the JAMA articles and the government reports and these agencies that say people have to take this seriously, so they want to keep us afraid. They want us to take it super seriously, and so they fully endorse the media hysteria that is keeping us in our houses and afraid of our neighbors.
I say we shelter in place the national media and watch how our problems go away. 80% of our problems go away. We just shut them in place, shelter them in place, say, you have no voice in my life. That's not going to happen. What do we need to do? Probably turn them off.
That's right.
If there's anything that's creating uncertainty or fear in your mind, that is an enemy to your soul. It's an enemy to your future.
And to be able to realize that is super important. To be able to discern that this input is unhealthy is extremely important, because the minute that we start divorcing all of our intuition and all of our values and principles that we espouse in our lives, that's not healthy. We're going down a bad road, and to be a skeleton of who we actually are meant to be.
You mentioned something that I love the fact that you mentioned this is going on offense when it comes to this whole thing, when it comes to your immune system. We're not victims of our environment. We know this, that your health is your responsibility. But what we've been told is that health is really out of your hands. And I think this is part of the reason why this really grates against the natural perspective, because the idea that health is out of your hands and that you're a victim to your environment and that you're out of control and that it's not your responsibility, and we wait for whatever drug that comes down the pipeline or vaccine that comes down the pipeline or government stimulus check, whatever that is now going to be the thing that's the savior, that now is going to be the thing that saves the day.
And I think more and more people are waking up to that right now. And that's what's the good that can come out of this hysteria, is that people are saying, I want to be healthy enough not to be afraid. How do I get healthy enough to not be afraid to go to the grocery store? How do I get healthy enough to not need my grandkids to not come over for 6 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
And so people want answers. They want to know that there is hope for them and that there is an opportunity to right the ship, because we know that diagnoses don't have to be permanent.
Right. Yeah,
If
that
you-
is so against the mainstream narrative, what you just said right there.
Right. If you are on a medication for X diagnosis today, does that mean that you will always need that for the rest of your life? And that's the question you can answer for yourself.
That's right.
But to know that there is another option and I don't have to stay where I'm at, I don't have to stay in this fear. And then there's people with a diagnosis of diabetes who take amazing care of themselves, and then a person with diabetes who doesn't take care of themselves at all. Would one of them weather an infectious disease better than the other?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we would need a lot more information about person A and person B before you could actually say that. You'd have to look at blood work. You'd have to look at all these other things. However, there are things that we can do to position ourselves to divorce fear, to walk in faith, to be hopeful that I have what it takes, that my body has what it takes to successfully fight an infectious disease or to not get the infectious disease in the first place.
And it takes a group of people challenging that narrative that says person A versus person B. There's certain attributes about person A, how they live, what they did, how they took care of themselves, that were outside of genes.
Absolutely.
Because when you're told that it's just you're a victim of your genes, there's nothing you can do that's going to change this outcome because of mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever else passed down this unfortunately bad hand to you, and now you're dealt with a bad hand, and the only solution to that problem is a drug. That's like being told your problem is age-related. It's just because you've gotten old. The only solution to an age-related problem is going to be a drug. But if we take responsibility over health, we understand something vastly different. And this is, I think, why it grates against the natural perspective and natural doctors, not just me, not just Art, but we know, and we've seen it, people reversing chronic illness because of the way they lived. It's not those people who got healthy because they took something. You don't get healthy, you do healthy. You don't get healthy,
Build health.
you do healthy. I know that doesn't make sense when it comes to the order of the sentence, but you do health. And so when you are healthy, when you do things that are healthy, you build health over time in your body. It's constantly recirculating, constantly recycling itself. And because of that, it's building healthy cells over time. You get a whole new set of red blood cells. You get a whole new stomach lining. You get a whole new skin cell. Like your body replaces itself over time. This is the person that's lived this way for a period of time, who's looking more vibrant. Their eyes are more clear. Their skin changes. It's incredible to watch how their physiology literally changes from the inside out over the course of a year.
And it can take time. And that's okay if it takes time, because I know when I first learned about what is it that your liver every 90 days is a whole new liver, and you're thinking, okay, well, if that's true, then why don't our health problems recycle every 90 days? But it's because if we keep doing the same thing, then our cellular input, our exposure to toxins, our nutrient input, what we're telling our cells doesn't change. So we're building a new liver every 90 days. That fact doesn't change. What changes is, have we given our liver a new chance? And so if I give my liver a new chance today and I decide I'm going to do that for the next 90 days, then maybe I can start to see a difference if I'm having those type of issues. Or you will start to see a difference because your body will regenerate if you give it the chance to do so.
I had a patient who's been with me for a while, and she's talked to me. She's older, right? She's an older person, and she's talking about how she's starting to see these major improvements in her health and in her life. And she said, it didn't happen fast, but I know that health doesn't happen instantly. And she said, the only thing that's instant is pudding and oatmeal.
Pudding and oatmeal.
Even those things aren't healthy.
Even those things aren't healthy. I love it.
We know that you build health over time. It takes time. It's the reason why the quick fix idea, or the idea that there is a quick fix, because I don't think there actually is one. I think it's a quick idea to cover up the current symptoms that you have, but we know that's just patchwork. It's a Band-Aid. That's why people will do that on a regular basis and maybe not take the harder path because of the idea that there's a quick fix. There's no such thing as a quick fix when it comes to your health.
And does suppressing the symptoms build your health?
And does it have negative health outcomes to try to trick the body into doing what you think it should do at the time that you think it should do it?
And that's one thing I always tell my kids is your body is always doing something smart. So then it encourages them to get curious. If your cut bleeds, why? Why does my cut bleed? It's cleansing out the body. It's pushing things out. It's, if I have a runny nose, why do I have a runny nose? And so if you get curious about your body always doing something smart, then you'll start to respect it in a different light. And you'll start to do things that make sense and that build health and that prepare you better for the next infectious disease outbreak.
And it grates against your skin and grates against your soul, I should say, when you do something that's unnatural, that is not in line with your core philosophy or core beliefs. And then, just one of our children, 8 years old, when he eats something that he knows he shouldn't have eaten, he tells us about it. And he talks about how this doesn't feel right, this doesn't taste right, and it's like, this is just food. But if you go to the average classroom of 8-year-olds, they're eating that stuff on a regular basis and really have no negative health outcomes or symptoms right away. Like, they don't feel it in their body right away. They're not expressing the fact that it caused them to have a runny nose, or it might have caused them to have a lowered immune system. Our 8-year-old blames whenever he has a sickness or whenever he's not feeling well, he traces it back to the idea that he ate whatever X thing that he knows he shouldn't have when he was with grandma or grandpa or whoever it was.
Right. And he'll even say, one funny example is he'll get what he calls luggies, like loogies in his throat. And he'll be like, oh, that's right. I ate fried chicken yesterday, so now I have loogies today. So it's so funny that he thinks that he can correct the overproduction of mucus in his throat from his diet.
His diet, that's right. And so let's get a few takeaways here. You want to build a strong immune system. There's a few ways to build a strong immune system, but let's be clear, it happens over time. It happens over time.
But today matters.
Tomorrow, it never comes. It's today. It has to happen today. And so you want to build a strong immune system. Look at what you're putting into your body, number one. What is it that you're putting into your body on a regular basis? And some people will say, well, it's very rare that I eat sugar. It's very rare. Listen, what is rare is going to be very different from person to person. Have an extended fast where you're actually fasting sugar.
Or anything that contains sugar. Because when you look at someone says, oh, well, I just had a little bit. Okay, well, how big is a Tylenol? And that Tylenol has a profound effect on your experience in life, on your pain going away or whatnot. And so,
well, to speak to that, depletes glutathione. We know that Tylenol will also increase your chances of site-specific cancers. We know that the active ingredient in Tylenol, acetaminophen, we know that it actually will cause your body to not produce enough glutathione, which goes on offense against cancer cells.
Right. But that little tiny capsule that you take, this Tylenol, has a profound effect. So if you have a little bit of sugar, it is information for your cells.
That's right.
Inflammation's going up, even if it's just a little bit. Your cells are still getting that information. You don't need a large amount of something to give information to your cells and tell them what to do or how to receive the nutrients or how to replicate. So it matters what you put in your body. And so to foster the notion that, oh, everything's good in moderation is really, a false sense of security. And you deserve better. You deserve better than that.
Fasting sugar for a period of time. Anything that contains sugar, and then also anything that turns to sugar.
That's the hard one.
So grains, breads, pastas, those things actually turn to sugar. We know there's a lot of problems with grains anyway, and you say, well, I eat whole grains. Well, those whole grains many times are sprayed with glyphosate, and there's an argument to be made about the fact that the grains that we have currently in our country are not necessarily those that were ancient grains. And so because of that whole reality, we know there's a lot of people who actually express symptoms, sickness, and chronic disease because of grains. And it's not just celiac disease. We know that it's connected to IBD, so inflammatory bowel disorders, and Crohn's. We know it's connected to ulcerative colitis. We know it's connected to a whole host of autoimmune diseases. And yet, unfortunately, a lot of people are not told that, and they're told, hey, eat the healthy grains. For a period of time, it's really important for a lot of people to make that decision, to make that call, whether they believe their body is going to be better off with just eliminating grains, breads, pastas, and all the things that turn to sugar.
Especially if you're dealing with something. I mean, if you want to be healthier, it's a good idea. And then if you're thinking, well, is it really worth, pursuing better health? Well, if you're dealing with an active health condition, why not give your body a better chance?
If someone's dealing with high blood pressure, high cholesterol is there because of the inflammation in the body, and the cholesterol is just there to reduce the inflammation. Very much like firefighters are there to put out the fire, your cholesterol is just there to put out the flame and fire of inflammation.
Your body's always doing something smart.
And yet if you constantly continue to inflame your body with the foods that you're eating, sugar is like fuel to the fire of inflammation.
That's right.
So anything, and you say, well, I don't eat that. Well, do you drink it? Because your Starbucks Frappuccino contains about as much as a Pepsi or a Coke or whatever soda that you drink.
You just threw out two.
So whatever it is. And so the reality is that if you're not eating it, it's likely that you're drinking it. You're putting it in your coffee, or you're putting it in your drink, whatever that might be. A good alternative to sugar is going to be stevia. It's plant-based. You can actually grow this in your backyard. Many of us in Indiana can do this in our backyard. And you can also get this stevia extract and add it to your drinks. And again, at some point, everything doesn't need to be sweet.
This morning I walked out on the patio and the whole stevia plant had been eaten.
Our 3-year-old.
I was like, which one of you boys ate the whole stevia plant?
Ate the whole thing. You gotta be kidding me. And so xylitol is another one that is a sugar alcohol though, and I feel like it's going to be better for most people just to stay away from sugar alcohols in general, but safe in moderation maybe, but baking with it maybe.
I think date paste and honey are my favorites.
That's good.
Honey,
I like that.
there can be some people who have a higher response blood sugar content. Is that how you would say that?
That's good.
With honey, but small amounts of honey, especially local honey that is a benefit to your body, a benefit to any allergen response you might have. And then date paste. Dates are higher in fructose, but your body responds well to it, better than just pure maple syrup. It's a little bit different. So
do you bake with date paste?
yes,
You can
cook
with that.
with date paste. You can blend it up and put it in any batter. And then with the honey, you can do that. It changes the texture of things. Honey obviously does, but when it comes to drinks or treats or yogurt and stuff like that.
Yeah, raw local honey. Again, the more that we do to our ingredients, the more likely it is to be harmful, and the body doesn't recognize it. When the body doesn't recognize a nutrient, there's all kinds of chemical reactions that then have to happen in order for your body to filter it, detoxify it, and try to get rid of that. It can only handle so much. You look at the toxic burden that we're now unfortunately burden our body with. When I do testing on patients, I cannot believe how much toxins that people have been exposed to on a regular basis. Heavy metals, and now we're masking ourselves in toxic masks, and I can't imagine how much glyphosate that people are now unfortunately being exposed to, and now is in their body because your body doesn't filter these things out very well.
Right, or thin plastic coatings on the mask, or whatever that is, whatever sealant is on the mask. If there's that, we don't know the toxic effects of those chemicals that we're keeping next to our face.
And then what do? We fry on Teflon pans that the PFOAs and C8 gets right into our system as well. And so you just start naming all the toxins. And then what's really interesting is that then somebody walks in and presents with these symptoms, and then what do? we try to treat those symptoms. What if it came from the Teflon pan? What if it's coming from the mask that you're wearing that's also extremely toxic? What's coming from a downstream effect? What if the headaches that you have is coming from the fact that you have subluxation in your spine that's causing pressure on the nerves? What if the fact that you have sciatica is not the fact that you don't have enough cortisol injections in your back? What if the fact that you have the cholesterol is not the fact that God forgot to put Lipitor, Zocor, Crestor, Simvastatin in your body? What if there's... So this is why I appreciate Stand for Health Freedom, is because you say, hey, listen, there's maybe a different way and different approach, and regardless of which camp you're in when it comes to the management of your body and the management of your kids' bodies, there's a different approach, but also we need to hold our legislators accountable for the idea that health is ours and our freedom is our own.
And it can only ever be a personal responsibility. No one can do health for you.
I love that. So one more time, how do they participate? How do they stand for health freedom?
Absolutely. You text the word no mandates, so all one word, no mandates, to 313131.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find more information on any of the socials, facebook.com/AskDrWilson, Instagram @AskDrWilson. If you want to learn more information, you go to www.vitality1.life. That's www.vitality1.life, and that's where you can learn more information, how you can get better connected and maybe have a different form and different source of healthcare. This is Dr. Nick Wilson. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time.